He trained until his hands bled, until his body broke, until everyone around him told him to stop, and he kept going anyway. But here's what nobody talks about. Tanjiro Kamado was never the most talented person in the room. He knew it, his trainers knew it, the story knew it, and that's exactly what makes him terrifying. Most people watch Demon Slayer and see the breathtaking water-breathing animations, the devastating fight sequences, the family tragedy that launches everything. But that's not what this story is really about. Because underneath all the flame and thunder and swordsmanship, Demon Slayer is quietly telling you something about yourself, about the way you work, about the stories you tell yourself when you fail, about the specific, dangerous lie that most driven people believe so deeply they never even question it. And if you've ever worked hard at something and still felt like it wasn't enough, this essay is going to hit different. Let's briefly orient ourselves. Tanjiro Kamado is not born exceptional. He is not the chosen one in the traditional sense. He's a charcoal seller's son, kind, gentle, deeply empathetic. And by the cold standards of the world he's about to enter, almost laughably ordinary. Then his family is slaughtered by a demon. His sister Nezuko survives, but only barely and only wrongly, transformed into the very thing that destroyed their home. And from that singular moment of devastation, Tanjiro makes a decision that the story never lets you forget. He will get stronger. He will master what others cannot. He will find a way where no clear way exists, not because he is gifted, because he is willing. Early in the series, Tanjiro begins his training under Sakonji Urokodaki, the retired water Hashira living alone on a fog-covered mountain. The training is brutal, deliberate, humiliating. Tanjiro runs the mountain. He dodges traps. He falls. He bleeds. He sleeps in the cold. He wakes and runs again. But here is the detail that changes everything, and most people watch right past it. Urokodaki never tells Tanjiro he's doing well. There is no encouragement, no reassurance, no, "You're almost there." Just the next trial, the next threshold, the next thing Tanjiro must survive before morning. What appears to be happening, harsh training from a demanding master. What is actually happening? Tanjiro is being asked to locate motivation somewhere inside himself where praise cannot reach. This is not cruelty. This is the most important psychological lesson the entire show embeds before a single demon is slain. Because here is the truth that most people who work hard never confront. You have been trained to work for approval, not for mastery, not for meaning, for the feeling of being told you're good. And when that signal disappears, when your boss doesn't notice, when the algorithm doesn't reward you, when your effort produces no visible result, you stop. Tanjiro cannot stop. He doesn't stop because the validation stopped arriving. He never started for the validation. He started for Nezuko. This is where Demon Slayer becomes quietly devastating if you're paying attention. There is a concept in psychology called intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Most people know the rough idea, internal drive versus external reward. But what the research actually shows, and what Tanjiro's arc dramatizes with startling precision, is this. When your reason to work lives outside you, in grades, in status, in other people's opinions, your capacity for hard work has a ceiling. It can only go as high as the reward. But when your reason lives inside you, in love, in loss, in something you cannot negotiate away, the ceiling disappears. Tanjiro doesn't train hard because he wants to be the best. He trains hard because the alternative is his sister dying as a monster. Because without him, she has no one. Because he made a silent, sacred promise to a person who can no longer speak in human words. You may have felt this, not in the context of demon slaying, but in a quieter, more personal place. The moment you stopped doing something for yourself and started doing it for someone, a parent, a child, a version of yourself you almost lost, a person who believed in you when you didn't. Most people know this feeling. That strange clarity when the ego steps aside and something deeper takes over. Tanjiro lives in that clarity constantly, and it is the real source of everything the show calls his hard work. But the story isn't finished with you yet, because there's a moment, And it comes multiple times, in different forms, where Tanjiro encounters someone simply better than him. Faster, more refined, born into the work in ways he wasn't. Zenitsu, for all his terror, carries a gift he didn't earn. Inosuke, raised by boars and violence, has a body tuned for battle in ways normal life cannot manufacture. And Tanjiro watches them, studies them, feels the gap. He doesn't deny it. He doesn't perform confidence he doesn't have. He just keeps going. What appears to be happening? The hero acknowledging his limits. What is actually happening? Tanjiro is modeling something that almost nobody talks about when we discuss hard work. The willingness to be behind and stay in the game. The dangerous part, and this is where the essay cuts close to real life, is that most people quit, not when they are failing, but when they realize they are not the most talented person in the room. That's the actual exit point. Not exhaustion, not failure. The comparison, the silent arithmetic of watching someone else and calculating that you cannot close the distance. Tanjiro never does that arithmetic. Not because he is naive, because he understands, at a level that never quite reaches conscious language, that this was never a race. It was always just the work. Let's talk about total concentration breathing, constant. The technique that separates the Hashira, the elite, from everyone else is not a secret weapon. It's not a rare bloodline ability. It is the practice of breathing with full, complete intention. All day, while sleeping. Without interruption. Most people watch this as fantasy mechanics, but strip the mythology away. What the show is describing, what it's smuggling into the visual language of anime combat, is presence. Sustained, disciplined, unbreakable presence with what you are doing. The Hashira are not superhuman because they are stronger. They are superhuman because they have learned to stop doing anything halfway. You may have done this yourself, arrived at something halfway. The workout you perform while checking your phone. The project you complete while dreaming about the outcome. The relationship you show up to while mentally rehearsing a different version of your life. We call this multitasking. We call it efficiency. The show calls it what it actually is. The thing that keeps you ordinary. Total concentration breathing is not a power-up. It is an argument for doing one thing. Completely. We cannot do this essay without him. Flame Hashira. Kyojuro Rengoku, a man so incandescent with purpose that every scene he inhabits becomes difficult to look away from. What makes Rengoku the emotional apex of everything the show is teaching? Not his power, not his technique, his joy. Rengoku works with joy, fights with joy, faces death with joy. He doesn't perform happiness for the people around him. He has found, somewhere in the deep architecture of who he is, that the work itself is the reward. He says it plainly, set your heart ablaze. This is not a battle cry. This is a philosophy of effort. He is telling Tanjiro, telling you, that the quality of your work will always be determined by the quality of your relationship to the work. Not the results, not the recognition, not the arrival, the burning, the staying on fire while you do the thing. And when he dies, when the show takes him from us with a violence that still doesn't feel fair, what he leaves behind is not grief. Exactly. It is a question. Are you burning or are you just busy? Here is where everything converges. Demon Slayer is not secretly a show about demons. It is a show about the specific kind of person who keeps going when every reasonable voice says stop. Who trains on a cold mountain when no one is watching. Who finds in the rubble of something broken, a family, a dream, a version of the future they planned. Not the end of the story, but the reason the story needed to start. You've been in that cold. Maybe you're in it right now. The project that isn't working yet. The skill that isn't clicking. The version of yourself you can picture clearly but cannot seem to reach from where you're standing. What Tanjiro teaches, quietly, cinematically, through every grueling frame of his training, is that the gap between who you are and who you need to become is not closed by talent. It is closed by returning to the practice. Returning after failure. Returning when the result is invisible and the effort is heavy and no one is watching, not because you're certain it will work, because you made a promise to something that matters more than your comfort. He wasn't chasing strength, he was chasing his sister home, and those are not the same thing. The first one is a goal, the second one is a reason, and reasons outlast everything. The realization. The most quietly devastating truth that Demon Slayer hides in plain sight is this. Hard work, as we usually talk about it, is a performance, a hustle aesthetic, a metric, a thing you post about. But what Tanjiro does is not that. What Tanjiro does is show up for someone who needs him too. That's it. That's the whole secret. Find the person, real or remembered. Find the promise, spoken or silent. And let the work become the expression of that, rather than the performance of your own ambition. Because ambition runs out. Love doesn't. Set your heart ablaze, and don't let it go out. And where we go next. If this essay reached something in you, I want you to sit with one question tonight. What are you actually working for? Not the surface answer, not the resume answer. The real one. The one that lives underneath all the language you've built around it. Because that answer is either going to carry you or quietly drain you. And knowing the difference is everything. Next time, we're going inside a very different kind of story. One where the character works just as hard as Tanjiro, carries just as much pain, and still loses everything. Because sometimes the most devastating question isn't, why do people fail? It's why do people who do everything right still end up empty? That story is coming. And if this one resonated, you're already going to feel that one in your chest. See you there.